Good morning. So I don't care what version of Dungeons and Dragons you're playing, from Moldvade Homes to these beautiful OSRs that have come for the last 20 years. If it features a save rule, whether it's defining save versus dragon breath, save versus spells, save versus poison, save versus turning to stone, or it features a more generic save versus, a single, right? Whatever the case may be. In my opinion, what makes Dungeons and Dragons and what makes that OSR, that D20 OSR, is the save mechanic. I use the save mechanic. One reason I like White Box, fantastic medieval adventure game, is it is a single save, and that save slowly gets better as they level up. Which means they become more competent. They become better at surviving. They become better. They become luckier, even, right? So the save for me, save versus confusion, right? Save versus. So somebody says, "Hey, I define that it starts to rain and they're moving through dangerous territory," and I tell them, it's getting slick and muddy and, etc. And there might be just something as simple as a save versus losing your footing and sliding off into the river, right? And then you're dealing with that. It doesn't have to be save versus death. It doesn't have to be save versus damage. It can be used for, a myriad of things, and I love it. And it's similar in a way to what I like in Dark Age of Man. We have a luck attribute. Now we need the luck attribute because when you define your Dark Age of human being, they aren't necessarily, if you're sticking to a character who's a peasant who would not know architecture, for instance, or would not know exactly what direction they're facing, or luck becomes this thing we can use for the character to explain, if they want to do an action, but they don't really have a foundation for it. It's a great tool. And save for me is the tool. And when I played John M. Stater's Spans game, James Spans games, and I've played games that generally use a single save, or a more broad save table, I use it, and I use it a lot more than I use attributes, right? I like the save because the save is a generalization of all a myriad of ways that a character's affected in play. Like I said, confusion, choking on smoke, right? It's something that might impact them in a negative way, etc., or they could ultimately get beyond, right? So part of what defines the D20 OSR / Dungeons and Dragons has to have that save, right? It has to have that. Again, the less we define what we use the save for, the more universally optional that is for me as a GM. Again, a lot of guys say, "Hey, just make a D6 roll and don't roll a 6," right? That works and it's great. It's 70% chance or whatever, right? Or, hey, go ahead and roll a D4, just don't roll a 1. That's a 75% chance, right? So you can just use dice for a quick percentage roll, right? It's very simple to do. I like the save because it's tied directly to the character, right? It's tied directly to the character's class, the character's level. Therefore, it makes the character itself mechanically more or less meaningful, right? Obviously, your first level, fighter who may have a save of 15, well, but it's tied directly to your profession or your class or your competency. So it's kind of fun. And something as simple as deciphering a puzzle. I don't make puzzle games. I rarely put actual live puzzles in front of players and say, "Figure this out." I'm not interested, because the character, the player needs to take action to address the puzzle. But I'm not going to try to be more clever than the players. I'm not going to try to create an actual puzzle that's supposed to be, somehow interesting to the players to try to figure out. No. We're going to use the character, and the character is going to have an ability, a wisdom or intelligence or a skill if you're playing a skill game, or the save, right? So again, I woke up this morning. I haven't played. It's been the holidays. I've been gone. I haven't had a chance to really run anything. I won't be running White Box probably the remainder. I might run it this month late if we can work out schedules. If not, I won't be doing my local White Box game until next month. But woke up this morning again perusing White Box as I'm organizing my notes from their first session, and because we're running more of a sandbox open world game, I need to kind of have all that stuff ready as I'm also preparing Symbaroum for my next role as the GM in Symbaroum. But every time I look at the D20 OSR White Box in particular, because I don't have any other OSRs around me, right? Moldvay is safely stored. My Holmes is safely stored. I'm not looking at those. And I do have some PDFs of like OSE, Old School Essentials, which is basically Moldvay remastered, fantastic version. We're playing that in Joth. But every time I look at it and I see that the elegant simplicity, yet the definition for me of OSR D20 starts with, does it use the D20? Does it use a save? Does it have a save? And how is that save used? And can I use it as a GM freely for all kinds of things that occur, right? Instead of randomly, arbitrarily saying, well, make a D6 check and just don't roll a 1 or a 2, right? We can do that because there's other things in the book that reference the use of the 1D6 for, listening at doors or breaching doors or finding hidden passages, etc. So that the D6 makes a lot of sense to apply mechanically because most D&D games use the D6 for this stuff, right? Okay. But I love that single save and I use it liberally. And most of the players I've played with appreciate that because it's a direct reflection on the class, on the profession, or the character's competence. But it's also very simple, right? Oh, I need to roll a 15 and up. Okay. And right. And it doesn't have, for instance, a good example is Phil's character. So in the last session, Phil's character, he failed to save for his character to not turn into the werebeast. And when he failed that, it ultimately put him in a situation where he was out of control of his character. Because again, once you turn into this werebeast, you lose control of him. And then ultimately, very easily, I could simulate with a couple of dice rolls who won that fight between the two wolves, the two werebeasts. And Phil's character unfortunately succumbed to this other supernatural creature that turned out to be. So that was a random roll to see, in a way, who won when they both turned, who won that battle, and whether they could ultimately save the son or save Phil's character. And Phil lost his character. It was basically a save versus death roll, but I narrated it as his character turning. When he failed the save, he couldn't stop from turning. Good thing he did, because the other character, the NPC character, would have torn him to shreds as a normal human being if he made the save. That would have been a fight, but he would have been alive and he would have been able to actually try to fight chained up, as a unarmed human against this creature. So most likely Phil's character was going to succumb. But failing that became a save versus death for Phil's character. And he completely understood it, completely made total sense to him. Okay. Now, I can't speak to how the save is used in D&D 5th edition because I haven't played it much. I did GM briefly years ago for a 5-session campaign, mini campaign. I've talked about that before. But I'm assuming, again, save versus strength, save versus wisdom. You just add the modifier of wisdom to the save check. I'm assuming those, but again, concept's the same, right? Instead of making an attribute roll, you're making a save using your wisdom modifier. You're making a save versus your strength modifier. We can do the same thing in White Box. If there's a +1 strength modifier and you're trying not to be crushed by the palisade by the portcullis, which has come down on you. It doesn't have to be a save versus death. Make a save versus your strength, add your strength bonus to it. So save +1, the save is 14. I've got a +1 fighter. I get to add 1 to the die roll. And I'm holding this portcullis from crushing my sternum or chest, at least for this turn, right? While they try to figure out how they're going to rescue me from this trap that's fallen down. So not all traps have to end you instantly, right? There could be defined narratively that save. How do we define that save when the portcullis comes down on them? They don't magically miss it, right? They don't magically die if they failed the save versus the trap. They could have, in a way, the opportunity to save again, right, as a escape route, so to speak. However, normally, if it's a save versus death roll, it's a save versus death roll, right? We're not going to keep fudging back their demise, right? If it's a save versus death and they fail it, we narrate how that occurs generally. So, but my point is, I'm reminded again of what I love about the D&D Moldvay. Of course, Moldvay used traditional save charts, cleric, save versus dragon's breath, save versus spells versus, so rarely did I use save then because it was defined against a particular thing. But I love that just generic save, right? Because now I can use it for anything. Confusion, drunkenness, your character's been drinking all night. You defined how you putting one down after another. Well, we're going to make a save versus how drunk are you, right? Is it going to actually affect your ability to fight or whatever? So it's very cool. Anyway, I don't know why, but I felt possessed after glancing at it as I put it away. I just got done doing some culling my notes for the next session. I said, I've got to talk about the save because to me, the save is one of the single greatest mechanics in gaming history. And we can use it and the players understand the definition of it. So it doesn't come off as arbitrary, I think, when we ask a player to save versus something, right? So anyway, I thought I would share that. Everybody out there, have a great weekend. Good day.